The question that has been brewing is that Adley Rutschman, what is going on? What has happened? Because offensively, the numbers are down since the All-Star break. Adley had a really rough month of July, hitting 132 for the entire month. He's a guy that you can see his numbers have declined. It hasn't seemed himself. He was a guy that you felt like could count on in big situations. Even his home run totals significantly down over that time. Now, there's always more to the conversation. But Rocco, why don't we dive a little bit closer into some of those stats, and then we can talk about what it could mean. And maybe, like we said, it's been a good day for Adley so far, but overall it's been a rough last 2 months.
It has been. And Adley was teetering around. I mean, he was hitting over 300 for a bit of time before the All-Star break. His pre-All-Star break numbers, though, he was hitting 275. And then post-All-Star game, now hitting 202. And we can break it down even more. His last 15 games before today, he was hitting 163. Those last 7 games, 130. So there's been a decline in Adley Rutschman's offensive production. And that's not what you want to see from a guy that we consider the best catcher in baseball. I mean, he's a guy that has the offensive power and has the ability to be a superstar. But with these numbers right now, he needs to get back to his old ways. But right now in this game today, you look at Adley Rutschman, and he's got to feel good. I know it's the White Sox. Don't want to knock Gavin Sheets. We love the guy, friend of the program, but
he's not pitching for the White Sox.
He's not. You're absolutely right.
He did his job.
The Orioles put up 13 on the White Sox today. Adley Rutschman was one of 6 players, I believe, to have a multi-hit game. So he went 2 for 5 with a run. He had an RBI, and it's got to feel good for him, honestly. Anytime you can get a 2-hit game at this point in the season, got to feel good regardless of who it's against, especially with the struggles.
And honestly, another part here when we're talking about with Adley, look, I think is because of the struggles. And when you look at Adley of being that guy that changed the kind of the feel of the Baltimore Orioles, you can go back and look to 2022 when he was called up. Everyone looked around and went, hey, the Orioles, the shift has happened. This team feels different. It looks different. The mentality of all those losing years seems to have vanished when Adley came up. And he was a guy that was very consistent. Besides him getting used to the big league level hitting, he was a guy that was consistent through and through. And he truly had one of those months where you're scratching your head. Now, I'll say this. I think that this is what I wanted to get into. I think there's more going on with Adley, and I'll give you a couple options that could be problems. One, guys, what do I say about baseball?
It's hard. Hard.
Baseball is hard.
Put it on a shirt.
So you're going to have your struggles already. And especially when you're a catcher like Adley, the stress and strain that it puts on your body every single time you go out there, that's one thing. And you can even see in the splits for Adley. There's no joke in that, guys. When Adley catches compared to when he DHs, it's drastically different. He's hitting 329 going into today when he DHs and 226 when he is actually behind the plate. There's a big difference there. And it just shows you it's a lot because you're trying to control the running game. You're trying to control the pitching staff, and you're just getting beaten up because you're squatting for 150 pitches or 170 pitches, however much it takes to finish up a game. So there's that. The other part could be, is he banged up? Guys, we've seen that he had to stay out a couple days because of his back. He got drilled in the hand. And for guys wondering, when you have to try to grip a bat, if your hand's a little bit off, that can throw you off. Your back's not feeling good, you can have some rough outings. And then maybe the other part that we're not even discussing, but it could be in the back of people's minds, is that Adley would love to stay in Baltimore longer. That he'd probably want to extend a contract, and he's probably thinking about he wants to perform to get the best deal. And I'm not saying that is the actual reason. I'm giving you options of what could happen. That's certainly something when you feel like you're pressing. And I think for Adley at times, when any of those moments when you don't feel right, you press more. So Adley, I think, has pressed a little bit more than he would like. He's a guy that's trying to battle through. But, guys, he's got to get out of it. And hopefully today, Rocco, like you said, this is going to be the moment. Because let's face it, guys, they're going to need a clutch Adley Rutschman in the postseason. Like we're talking about big moments, you need your cornerstone franchise guy that changed your organization around to be a big part of that.
They need him to show up in the postseason this year. Last year was a struggle, but last year was also, not going to make excuses for the guy, but that was his first taste of the postseason. And for a lot of these guys, it was, and the inexperience showed. This season, you got your second postseason, hopefully, if the O's can finish things out and lock up either the division or a wild card spot. Adley Rutschman needs to show up. He knows that. The fan base knows it. And that's what they expect from their former number 1 overall pick.
And also, I'm seeing some people talk about the John Boy breakdown. Was that him talking about framing pitches in comparison to Alvarez?
Yeah, and actually, so this is funny because we talked about this earlier with right before James McCann came on. So this was months ago, and it was after, was it William or Wilson Contreras who had his arm broken by the bat catching? It was the one on the Cardinals. Is that William?
Dude, that's.
I want to make
Pretty
sure.
sure. Pretty sure it's William.
I think it's William because I think Wilson's on.
Yeah. No, so it's Wilson. William Contreras is on. So
exactly,
Wilson Contreras had his arm broken on a swing that he was reaching out. And they talked about this year, catcher's interferences are through the roof. Like, it's not like, I think they passed last year's total for catcher's interferences like 2 months ago.
Yeah.
So it's just through the roof. And the biggest thing is catchers are going out there trying to steal strikes. They're getting as close to the plate as possible. And they talked about how, I believe it was Brandon Hyde said something early in the season, that they're not doing that because of the risk, because of the catcher's interferences. You're putting guys on base. You then have a Wilson Contreras issue where he literally got his arm fractured because he went to go frame a pitch and the bat, guy swinging, hit his forearm. So there are risks, but it is something, at least early on in the season, the Orioles said, no, us as a team, we're not trying to get up as close as possible to steal strikes. We're trying to stay with what we've been doing. So it is kind of interesting to see. Maybe that changes. I don't think it will. I think they probably would have by now, but there is like a fundamental difference in the thinking, I think, between different teams for that.
Well, I mean, definitely framing is way different than it was in the last recent years to now. That is one thing. But also, yeah, the safety of your catchers moving up in the box or moving up behind home plate, there is that fear because we've seen it happen where guys have gotten hurt. I think overall, in general, I think the other part of it, your body just kind of feels like it can break down a little bit. And I think that's part of what's been happening. And look, I tell people this, besides shortstop being probably your most important position out in the field, catching's right there with it behind the plate because of how much is asked of you and how much is put on your body specifically. And then also you got to try to call a good game. And also you're trying to steal pitches, trying to frame well. And you guys, if you go back and watch the Zach Eflin breakdown, I know people are coming in from the game. Zach Eflin realizes where the strike zone is that day. If they're throwing it off the plate and McCann can frame it well, that pitch is 4 inches off the plate, but the ump's calling it that game, you're damn right I'm going to try to take advantage of that. So it's certain things like that. But guys, it just, make no mistake, it's Adley Rutschman is the guy that I think, whatever it is, just trying to get back in rhythm. And his body's probably tired. He's mentally pressing a little bit. But maybe today, just like for a lot of Baltimore Orioles bats, this could be the confidence boost that they're getting at the right time.